episode 202 of Retro Encounter, and this is RPG Villains. I'm Mike Sollosi, and today we're here to bring back our RPG Villains format to Retro Encounter, inspired by Shea Serrano's Villains podcast about movie villains, but this time talking about the greatest villains of RPGs. And to join me to discuss a famous RPG villain is Zach Wilkerson.
Hi there.
And Leona McCallum.
Howdy.
Now, Zach, earlier this year you were on a podcast with me where we discussed Kefka Palazzo. That was the first RPG Villains episode.
I was, yeah, it was a good time.
And Leona, about a year ago, you were on a panel with me and some others on discussing a certain video game, Suikoden II.
Yes, one of my favorite podcasts we ever did.
Yeah, and Zach, I know you weren't with the website at the time, but
I was not.
Yeah, but you're a big fan of Suikoden II.
It's the best RPG of all time. Yeah, right. So of course I am.
I'm looking at your two chat avatars in our right now, and you both have Suikoden II characters as your avatars. Well, I don't, but we're gonna bring those two worlds together, RPG Villains and Suikoden II, and talk about Luca Blight, the Mad Prince, the bloodthirsty force of nature, unbelievably successful military commander of Suikoden II. Let's go into his background a little bit. It's sort of in context of the Suikoden II world. We're going to spoil the bejesus out of Suikoden II this whole episode. So if you're spoiler unfriendly and haven't played Suikoden II, you should just move right along, I'm afraid. But okay, back to Luca Blight. Luca Blight is the prince of the Highland Army. Well, okay, he's the prince of the Highland Kingdom and a commander of the Highland Army. He instigates wars with the nearby nations of Jostin and the city-state, commits all kinds of atrocities, and eventually is thwarted when he tries to assault the what's the United Army called that your main character creates, the new state army? Yeah.
It depends on what you name it, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Yes.
Orange Army.
Yes. Actually, for me, it was the Retro Army.
Yeah. I named it RPG Fan Army last time I played, so there you go.
Yeah. I named yes, I named it the Retro Army. So anyway, he falls when he tries to counterattack the Retro Army at their castle. Is set up by his own sub commanders, and basically dies when every single named character in the game does a focused assault on him. It's a 3-party, 18-player, 18-character set of battles before Luca Blight falls. And surprisingly, Luca Blight falls not really near the end of the game. He falls maybe around the midpoint or the 60% mark. And the rest of the game is the New State Army fighting the remains of the Highland Army and other forces in the Suikoden II world, just trying to end this bloody war that Luca Blight thrusts the entire world into. But he's an extremely memorable, extremely powerful, extremely dramatic villain, and he shows up at or near the top of a lot of best villains in RPGs lists. And I was aware of his notoriety before ever playing Suikoden II or any Suikoden game for that matter. So we're going to go through the same set of categories, the same set of questions that we did when we discussed Kefka a few months ago, and just present these to the panel. First, what is your first impression or first reaction to Luca Blight when you first played the game? So go into a little bit into when you played Suikoden II and what you thought of Luca. Starting with you, Leona.
So when I first played it, the first time you see him, I think, is when he shows up in the Unicorn Brigade, the Youth Brigade camp after he's slaughtered all the children. So right away, he doesn't seem like a great guy.
Strong words. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he sets the tone by slaughtering a bunch of teenagers, and yeah, he seems like an intimidating figure. I don't know if I thought this is the main villain of the game at the time, because he just looked like he looked imposing, but I wouldn't say he looked like a typical JRPG supervillain at the time. He just looked like a general in an army.
I assumed he was the main villain of the game only because I had heard so much about him before playing Suikoden 2. But I didn't play Suikoden 2 until 2018 and heard people talking about it for perhaps 7 or 8 years before playing it. But Zach, same question. What was your early impressions of Luca Blight when you first played Suikoden 2?
I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to remember. I mean, I played the game pretty much right when it came out, I think. So it was like 99, I think. My first impression of him really it boils down to the first thing I remember about him is him burning down the village and then
was it
slaughtering someone and making them be a pig first. I mean, he becomes such a monster so quickly. I think is my first impression of him.
Yeah, I think that's the second time you see him. It's like I think so. Yeah, maybe an hour or so after the Youth Brigade stuff in one of the first villages that you visit.
Right, yeah. I mean, you go through the village a couple of times first, I think, to run some errands after you've been captured by the city-state mercenaries. And then, he's such a monster early on, and he's so unique in terms of Suikoden villains, too, because usually they're just like normal people. And in his case, he is just pure monster.
Right on. So, speaking of Luca Blight being a monster, let's ask another question that came up in the previous villains episode as well. What do we think is the worst thing Luca Blight does in Suikoden 2? The greatest atrocity that this monster accomplishes. I'll give you a few suggestions or a few options to choose from, and please add to them if you can think of more. First are the two things that we already mentioned: him slaughtering the teenagers of the Youth Brigade, only to and again this is his own army, and his purpose being to blame that slaughter on the city-state army and unite the Highland populace against in favor of the war. Second thing, destroying that first village of the game. I think it's Ryubei Village.
Yes.
I'm burning down Ryubei Village after humiliating a few of its residents by making them act like pigs. The third option, betraying and killing his own father, Agaras Blight, in order to seize control of the kingdom and become king of Highland, all too briefly before he's betrayed by his own people. And so those are our three options. And either of you have a suggestion that's worth considering?
I definitely think the burning of Ryubei Village stands out as a really horrific point in the game where you go, wow, this guy is evil. He takes pleasure in the sadistic nature of the killing. You know, it's not just a military campaign. It's sadistic enjoyment from the suffering he causes.
I mean, referencing back to our previous podcast, I don't think that even Kefka ever reached that level of sadism. I mean, it's that would be my pick for. I mean, I think probably Muse, when he wipes out the entire city of Muse, is pretty terrible too.
Mm-hmm. Muse is enormous. It's one of the biggest metropolises in the world here, and Ryubei is a tiny village, but he maybe exhibits more cruelty in Ryubei.
So certainly he probably kills more people in Muse, but it's just like the level of cruelty, and it's such an iconic moment. It's one of the very rare FMV sequences in the game where you get to see sort of like the flames going, a little bit reminiscent of Final Fantasy VII and Nibelheim. But yeah, that's the moment for me. It's iconic. I mean, when I think of Luca Blight, that is the first thing that comes to mind, and it is the most cruel thing that I think I can really remember a villain doing in any RPG.
I was just going to say one we didn't mention is one I think a lot of people forget is that they kills the first named character that we get to know, and that's Paul.
Oh yeah, and
he's the guy after we get captured and taken prisoner by the city-state by Victor and Flick as the little guy who feeds us and befriends us and gives us tasks to do and to protect Pelica against. Luca, he gets struck down, and you think he's going to be a character, one of the stars of Destiny, but sadly he dies. And
Paul is such like a good character to you while you're in prison too. He's so decent to you while you're a prisoner for the city-state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's murdered in cold blood, shortly after he's endeared himself to the character.
Right, absolutely,
endeared himself to the player. I mean, now. I agree that maybe Luca Blight's most iconic moment is that scene in Ryubei where he encourages a villager to act like a pig. I think his most awful task might be the very first scene in the game with the Unicorn Brigade because he's murdering teenagers and children. it immediately sort of gives Ryo and Joey like a very dark first impression of this war, and also it's pointless. He was killing his own men to just for a political reason or and blaming the opposing army for it. It seems like it's
bloodshed for more bloodshed. Yeah,
it's bloodshed for more bloodshed. Like horror just to horrify. People that were maybe uncertain about the war, where what he did in Muse and Ryubei were horrible, and what he did to Pol was horrible. But that was fighting in a war, slaughtering his own men. Just I don't know. I think he does all kinds of horrible things, but the Unicorn Brigade thing stands out.
I love that not even really mentioned outside of you mentioning it as one of the options is that he literally kills his own father.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's like whatever.
Yeah, murdering your father with a crazy scheme is maybe 4th or 5th place here.
Right.
But I'm gonna have this go into our next question a little bit. Can we justify Luca's actions? Maybe he had a point. I'm not saying that. Now, this is similar to the Kefka episode where, he is horrible and we really can't justify his actions. But this also lets us look into Luca's past a little bit. And I think part of why we're maybe not as shook by him murdering his dad is because his dad wasn't a good person by any estimation.
Right.
I think we had to do some background research here. Luca Blight had a horrible event happen when he was a child, where he witnessed his mother being raped and murdered, and his father flee the scene when he was very young. And I don't think
she was murdered because Gilia becomes princess, and I believe she was conceived via that rape.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so she was just raped. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm just
saying. It's for clarification's sake.
Sure. But that doesn't happen in the actual text of Suikoden II. That's supplementary materials from one of the Suikogaiden games. But if you look up Luca Blight or do a little bit of research on him, it's sort of in his biography. So,
they make some. He makes some brief mention when he is talking to Gilia at some point about what happened, and also when Gary's Blight is dying to that event. But yeah, it's not fleshed out in the game at all.
Yeah. Calls his dad like a coward because he ran away when the bandits attacked.
Right.
So they sort of hints around it, but we never really go into depth in the actual game itself.
Yeah, and he says he's not even your real father when he's talking to Gilia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this immediately has him just gives him a hatred for City State because the bandits that attacked were from there, and a hatred for his father who fled the scene and allowed all these horrible events to happen, and also probably negatively colors his feelings about Gilia because if she resulted from if she was conceived as a result of that rape, her existence might remind him of that.
Right.
So he's just surrounded by things he hates or reminders of things he hates, and that probably contributed to his awfulness. The other big contributor to his awfulness, other than just being living a life of entitlement as a prince, is possibly the influence of the Beast Rune.
Right.
Because the Beast Rune is an item of great power being held by the Highland Kingdom, and it's sort of it embodies sort of war and violence and a lot of those other things, and maybe just being in proximity to that might have amplified his negative feelings,
right?
And also probably amplified his powers because I don't know if we made it clear enough. Luca Blight is an extremely strong warrior. Like he is maybe the most powerful fighter in the Suikoden II world.
Yeah, Murayama actually says that he's the most powerful villain in all of the Suikoden universe. The guy who created Suikoden. So
right.
Yeah,
so it sounds like a good authority on the matter.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah.
Because again, it takes 3 teams, like 1.5 armies, and being abandoned by his own men to take him down.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Indeed,
it's one of the most epic scenes in RPG history.
So, again, I wonder how much of this is a bit of a nature nurture question. Like how
Right.
much of this do we think contributed to the present Luca, or the Luca at the start of Suikoden II? Is it like without the Beast Rune, would he have become like this? Without that traumatic childhood event, would he become like this? Or if he had just been raised as a prince, naturally hating the city-state because as an enemy nation, would he still be the same Luca Blight, do we think?
No, I think nurture takes a big part in that. I think the actions that happened, sort of, and who his father was and how he acted towards Luca dictated, or at least led Luca down the path that we see in Suikoden II. I don't think he was an inherently bad baby.
I mean, I guess it's sort of like a philosophical question in a broader sense too. I mean, like I imagine lots of people have things that are even worse happen to them when they're a kid. I mean, lots of people do, and they don't react like being literally the worst, most evil villain in the history of JRPGs. Exactly. I think that the Suikoden writers and Murayama are trying to set that up, but he's such a force of nature that I think that even without that, he might not be as horrific. But that doesn't come just from nurture. I'd imagine there's something totally busted there. You could argue that it's the Beast Rune, but the Beast Rune's been in Highland forever, and people haven't probably reacted quite the way that Luca has. I mean, the Beast Rune, I think, was a gift from Highland like 100 years ago when they split off. Harmonia, I'm sorry.
But still, that's 100 years of people considerably less evil and cruel than Luca Blight growing up in
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a contributing factor, but I think overall, no, he doesn't have a point, and I think that he probably mostly was just insane.
Yeah, as for the Beast Rune, I don't know, the way I see it is that he's most likely he was harboring a lot of hatred and growing up, and he probably, in my mind, sought out the power of the Beast Rune to use it and let it corrupt him rather than just being near it corrupted him.
I agree with all that, but I mean, you think about someone like Ted from Suikoden 1 and Suikoden 4 as well, and he's with, I can't remember, what's the Death Eater rune, which is probably even more evil as a rune. I mean, we don't get as much information about the Beast Rune as we do about some others, I guess. It's probably part of why it's hard for me to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, this is also true of Kefka a few months ago, but like this is a terrible way to frame the question for two pretty irredeemable characters. Maybe neither of them had a point, but just looking into Luca's background a little bit, I think it's a bit of a perfect storm. He's raised as a prince with every opportunity. He hates his father because of his cowardly actions. He is harboring incredible hate and ambition to act upon that hate, and the Beast Rune probably takes those negative feelings and amplifies them. So it's a perfect storm of horrible events and negative emotions and magical empowerment that makes Luca who he is. It is completely unfair to say that he was that he came out the womb this bad.
I think so.
Yeah, but it's a lot goes into Luca's evil, and we see some pretty evil stuff throughout this game, as we mentioned in the previous category. But now let's move on to the next question, which it's in Shay Serrano's podcast. It's called the Jason Statham question because Shay loves the Fast and Furious series. But Leona, you privately asked me who's Jason Statham is.
Don't act Leona like that.
So maybe we should change it to something else. Like, do we want to call it the Dragon Ball question or the Chrono Trigger question?
the biggest question, yeah.
But basically, the gist of it is: could Luca be rehabilitated, or could there be a scenario where he joins the hero's side at one point instead of dying a villain? And I'll give my answer to this first. Conditional, yes, but it would have to fundamentally change a lot of things. Like say the moment that he dies on the cliff, he survives, is not executed by many people who want to execute him, and he lets go of all of his hate, realizes that his Highlander kingdom betrayed him, and decides to join the New State Army. That is giving him so much benefit of the doubt that it is basically impossible. So yeah, my answer is extremely conditional, yes, but I think those conditions cannot be met in a reasonable story.
Okay.
In that circumstance, I think he just goes around and slaughters everyone.
You know,
I mean, honestly, I don't think that there's an ounce of goodness in him.
Yeah.
I don't think he believes in anything but himself.
So you're saying no?
Correct.
I think also no, but if I believed in the inherent power of rehabilitation for anyone, and it was possible. I still don't think he could have joined the heroes, because I think Joey would have still killed him in a power move to take control of Highland.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Joey would not stand to have a true heir of Highland other than Jillian.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think he was doomed either way.
So
even if he was rehabilitated.
I still do not love how Joey treated Jillia in the good ending of Suikoden II. He should have let her come with him, but I don't know if we agree or disagree on that point. But
no, I agree. I think he makes some pretty evil choices toward the end. I agree.
Yeah,
we'll get to Joey in a second, but. I basically agree. Like, my extremely conditional yes is basically playing devil's advocate. It would have made extremely little sense for Luca to join the hero side.
Yeah.
I think one of the best versions of this question, talking about another video game for a second, is Zaro in Dragon Quest IV. Who in the remake of Dragon Quest IV
actually does join you. Yes,
he actually does join you in a plot point or a plot twist that actually makes sense.
Right, I agree.
Because there's no seeds planted or no ideas that suggest Luca could make a switch the way Zaro does.
I mean, I think Magus really is the classic example of this too. Yeah. I mean, he makes sense, absolutely.
And man, we even almost call this the Dragon Ball question. So it's really Akira Toriyama characters that are the ones that switch sides. Chrono Trigger, Dragon Quest, and Dragon Ball. We hit the trifecta.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, you're right.
Although I mean, a lot of it would be Yuji Horii writing in the two video games, but I digress. So could Luca be rehabilitated? Almost certainly not, unless you get real weird playing devil's advocate.
Yeah. Unless, like, the Bright Shield rune has the power to heal minds or something.
No. Maybe.
You know.
Maybe.
If they did
Could be possible.
Yeah, if they did try to do an option like this, they would probably explain it away with the Bright Shield rune.
Right. I mean, and I think it's like together it's the rune of beginning, and it's like supposed to be the first true rune, so it probably has that power.
Probably.
Yeah, we could rehabilitate Luca, give him a new beginning. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Just the idea of Luca Blight making a neutral face or a kind face, and not one with like a twisted smirk on it, doesn't even make sense to me.
Wait until you see his A rank support.
Oh,
I'm gonna S rank Luca Blight.
Tea time with Luca Blight.
Oh.
Oh my. Okay, I don't know how that would go at all. It sounds like a fanfic waiting for happen.
Yeah, Leona, get on it. Get on it, Leona.
Get on it. Tea time. You have three options.
Tea time with Byleth and Luca Blight.
Yeah, slaughter, murder, arson. That's good. Nice.
Okay, murder, arson, or get on the ground and oink for me, Piggy.
It's a trick question. They're all correct.
Oh boy. Okay, so next question, and we went into this a little bit already. Bonus footage. Is there a moment in Luca Blight's life or in Suikoden II that we know happened but do not get to see in game and want to see in game? And we mentioned this earlier, like that whole incident of Luca's mother's rape and father's
my choice. Yeah,
that was only in Suikoden or possibly a CD drama, a drama CD, and so it's not represented in Suikoden 2 at all. And I think that a flashback there would not humanize Luca Blight, but at least give players an extra insight into him.
Give it a little bit more depth.
Yeah, is there another Luca moment or Luca scene that we think could be missing that would improve the Suikoden 2 experience?
I think his discussions with Joey when they first Joey convinces to Luca to let him join his army and sort of
that's a great choice.
Those would be interesting, I think, to see.
Yeah,
because basically Joey stays behind when they're infiltrating a Highland camp. And we know that a discussion between Joey and Luca happens then. And then another one happens later where Joey is like proposing a plan to Luca. I think one of the Highlands. I think it's part of the assassination at Muse, or maybe the push.
I think it's to take down Teresa at Green Hill, I believe.
It's probably the Green Hill plan with the food, or just more scenes between Joey and Luca, I think, is a great idea. And I
agree.
I also think my other suggestion for this is at least one additional scene between Luca and his father, because we don't really see much of Agorist at all until his assassination. And,
we have like maybe one scene before that, and he says one line of dialogue, I think. So I'd like to have more about why he hates him so much.
Yeah, or even just a scene between them with the underlying idea that Agorist is a little clueless and Luca Blight is resentful or hateful. It wouldn't even have to openly give us text or story. Just something to get the idea of their vibe or their feelings. I think would be really good.
Yeah. I'd like to see more scenes with he and Julia too. I mean, I think that would be just more with the Highland sort of royal family. I think would have been interesting. I mean, they give us a lot. I mean, they give
us a fair amount, but I still want more.
Yeah, it's hard for me to criticize this game. I'm sorry, but it really is. But yeah, I would like to see a little bit more of that would have been good. But the thing you brought up in terms of what happened with the city state would have been my answer for this.
That's good.
Right. Next question I have is overmatched or undermatched? The main characters of Suikoden II, are they worthy foils for Luca? Does he overshadow them? Do they match him? Are they worthy foils? And I guess we'd mostly be talking about Ryo and Joey here. I mean, you could throw in Victor or Flick or whomever else, but I mean, really, it's about the bright black sword and bright shield. I think my answer is yes and no. First of all, because they do defeat him, so that does count as matching him at least a little bit.
It actually really requires all 18 party members in this case, unlike the Kefka fight where I don't need my other 8 that I get. I mean,
you need 18 party members and treachery and betrayal from Luca's own men, which is precipitated by Joey. So I think that really Luca overshadows everyone. It takes a crazy strategy and literally everyone else to take Luca down. And it's like if the war had gone on in a more traditional manner and there wasn't subterfuge involved, I think the main characters lose. I agree. I don't think they match up to him.
Yeah, I mean, they do a better job of this than in any game I can think of indicating his level of power. I mean, I can't think of another time where, even after you win that fight, you still have, a set of arrows that have to fire at him to take him down.
Up until, the moment... or up until the fight where you defeat him, you are basically on the run from him the entire game. It's they communicate Luca Blight's power and savagery and cruelty nonstop. You're always seeing the ruins of something he's destroyed or losing to his army and on the retreat. It is communicated extremely clearly how dangerous he is, and it takes some real shenanigans to take him down. So I think that I believe the creator of the Suikoden series when he says he's the most powerful warrior in the entire world, and I also believe that Luca absolutely would have won if he didn't have so many factors working against him.
I mean, the Beast Rune itself goes down with just 6 people. You know what I mean? So, I think it depends on how you sort of think about this question. I think from a power perspective, he overshadows everyone. But when I think about, and it speaks to how amazing Suikoden 2 is, that when I think about Suikoden 2, I think that what overshadows Luca even is the idea of Nanami and Ryu and Joey's relationship. That's still what I think about. I think that the power of that still overshadows Luca Blight, even though he is one of the 2 or 3 greatest villains in JRPGs.
But also, that arc takes place over 100% of the game, and is the crux of the climax of the game. And Luca sort of owns the game for the first 2/3 or so. So I mean, I agree that the relationship between Ryo and Joey and Nanami is incredibly important and one of the features of the game of the story. But Luca, I think he really dominates the spotlight.
Yeah, if I was going to say, I think Luca kind of defeats himself by being so powerful, coupled with being so insane. He leaves his strategist to his Leon Silverberg, what he sees as no other option than to basically put down a mad dog and instill joy as a ruler of Highland instead, because Leon and Shu work together to sort of orchestrate this grand scheme where it's only with the combined army of not only the protagonist but also the enemy army, basically, to take down this one guy. So it's only through his own power, I'd say, he's really defeated.
That reminds me of the popular anime and manga Rurouni Kenshin. For a significant part of that story, the main villain is a samurai named Makoto Shishio, but he's covered in bandages and suffers from terrible burns, and he basically is so undefeatable and so powerful that he eventually dies because he overheats and spontaneously combusts. The writer made someone so powerful, the only way he could be defeated was by literally exploding from his own power.
I love that. I won that for him.
Yeah, I think the mangaka really wrote himself into a corner for that. But that's sometimes they're so powerful that they can only be defeated by themselves or circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in another game, maybe a lesser game, Luca would have just fallen to the heroes uniting under truth, love, and justice and friendship. But
right.
But only a few of those things factor into his actual defeat. But
right.
Let's go into a new question. This category is called regrets. So what characters made mistakes, and what could have prevented Luca from happening? Not the actions of Luca himself, but what regrets do other characters have that might have stopped Luca? And I think number one has to be from his parents. If anything that the king could have done to be a firmer ruler or a better father might have made Luca less of a monster.
Yeah,
I think this is very, very this is maybe unfair of me if I were to do this to a real person, but I blame the parents. in this fiction, in this video game, this fiction, I blame the parents.
I also blame parents, but it's a different person's parents, and it's I'm blanking. Who's the mayor of Muse? What's her name?
Oh yeah, Lady Annabelle.
Annabelle. I think Annabelle's father was the one who orchestrated the bandit attack on King Agarus and his wife, and so I would say the whole events of Suikoden II spiraled from that event.
Yeah. That's one of the brilliant things about this game, too, because you also see with the Grasslands tribe that are featured in Suikoden 3, what happened and what the city-state did to them as well. And I think that's one of it's hard for me to place blame at anyone's feet for Luca Blight, because I honestly think that I think it's pure insanity that really rules him. Yeah. But I think the game does a great job of showing, even that you go to a town in Highland and you get to sort of talk to some of them and see sort of both sides of it, and sort of how they're feeling as citizens of Highland. But in terms of regrets and who could take down Luca, maybe his parents, but even then, I don't know. I think that some people are just sociopaths and they're born that way. I don't know.
I definitely don't believe you can just say, "Oh, my parents were bad," so that place the blame on them. It's definitely a factor, but at the end of the day, Luca is making the choices for himself. Yeah,
I mean, maybe Joey could have stopped him sooner, maybe, but I don't know.
It's a hard one because she has a sibling, and you kind of want to.
Right. I mean, he has to gain power before he can then seize power from him.
Yeah.
I think one character that has a lot of regrets that's not directly related to Luca, but it is definitely someone who fits this category, is Han Cunningham.
Right.
Yeah.
In sort of one of the big stories before the events of Suikoden II, Han wins in a duel versus Genkaku in the unification war that takes place before the events of Suikoden II, and the reason Han won was because Genkaku didn't attack, because Genkaku knew that his sword was poisoned and didn't want to win from that kind of situation.
Annabelle's father.
Yeah. Wait, he's Annabelle's father.
Yeah.
Annabelle's father is the one who sets it up.
Yeah.
Yes. Annabelle's father is the one that poisoned
Poison.
the sword. Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. For a second, I was
Exactly, yeah.
confused and thought you said that Han Cunningham was Annabelle's father.
No.
Okay, good. I'm less confused than I thought I was for a second. But anyway, I think Han Cunningham has been living with regrets about that fight his entire life. And when he duels Ryo, and Ryo wins and Han dies, he sort of dies satisfied that that Genkaku's successor defeats him, which is a hell of a moment. Like for not being very present in the story, Han's a pretty interesting character. But I think
It's such a moment when you finally see him.
Yeah, I sort of assumed he was dead. I mean, it's an amazing moment. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think he has so many regrets about what happened in that unification war, and his winning that duel set up a lot of the success for the Highland Kingdom, and maybe without that win, like Highland is not in the position that they're in to hold this second war. I think Han watches all the war and suffering around him, and deep down blames himself from that duel 20 years ago.
I agree.
So I think that if there's one character with regrets who maybe sees a little bit of his past in the present war is Han. So he's got some regrets.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a moment when that happened. Like because he shows up in one of the
last tactical battle.
Yes,
Yeah.
in one of the tactical battles, because his unit is like the defender of the Highland Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize who he was for a second until closer to the duel. There's some setup dialogue that helped my memory along.
Yeah, the game just kind of sneaks him in there.
Yeah.
For like, if you've been paying attention, you'll know
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
I was paying attention. There's just so many names that it took me a minute.
He's older than when we see him as a young man in the flashback.
Yep. That's true.
An old man now.
All right. So a lot of characters have regrets. It's hard to say exactly if Luca's villainy or Luca's reign of terror could have been prevented, but there's people with regrets. But here's the question that was, that we discussed before the podcast, and maybe it was one of the major factors into wanting to have this podcast. Is Luca Blight the true main villain of Suikoden II? And
Hot take ready.
All right. Yeah, I think the correct answer is maybe, and worth a discussion, which we're about to have. I'm going to give us a couple options first.
Okay.
True main villain of Suikoden II. Option 1, Luca Blight. Mm-hmm. Option 2, the Beast Rune / the evil that resides in men's hearts. Option 3, Joey.
Uh-huh.
Option 4, King Agaris, Luca Blight's father. Uh-huh. Option 5, Leon Silverberg.
Yeah.
Who's one of the real manipulators of the game. And option 6, and maybe the secret winner here, the vampire Mechalord, who is secretly running everything from behind the curtain.
I was going to say Pelica.
Now that would have been a twist I didn't see. Final battle, you duel Pelica under the influence of the Beast Rune.
Excellent.
Oh my gosh, that's the only thing that could have made this game better was that. Yeah, there you go.
The Beast Rune, seizing upon all of Pelica's negative emotions, she erupts in rage, and the final battle is a duel against her.
Oh, wow. I'm into it.
Okay, but that does not happen in Suikoden 2, so that she's not the secret seventh option. What are your thoughts on who the true main villain of Suikoden 2 is? We're definitely not going to go into every one of those 6 choices. Starting with you, Zach.
I mean, the one I hate most is Gerudo from Matilda because he kills my girl Nanami. Well, maybe, sort of, kind of. I don't know.
And he's a despicable jerk. Pretty soon after you're introduced to him, and it's one of the really secretly cool moments of the game is when his 2 orders of knights all abandon him.
Yeah, they all peace out on him. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, to join the New State Army. Who are those 2 knight commanders again?
Camus or Camus and Miklatov.
Yeah, Miklatov and Camus. I love it how those 2 guys, they clearly want to fight on the side of good, and Miklatov is sort of more hot-headed and more, I'm going to go join the army, and Camus is like, all right, you do that. I'm going to stay behind, but here I got your passports ready. I got the door open for you. Do what you got to do. Like they have this really great sense of honor and trust between those two guys, even though they have very different personalities and act differently, and they end up both joining your army, of course. So I really love Miklatov and Camus with their dynamic in that part of the game, and at the same time, the King of Matilda is such a jerk and does one of the most despicable actions in the post-Luca Blight segment of the game.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if he's the main villain, but he's one of the characters I hate the most, for sure.
Yeah. I hate him more than Luca, for sure, because I actually know the nominee. The true answer to this question, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because when we first started talking about this villains podcast, I was like, let's talk about Joey, because I really wanted to talk about him because I think he's fascinating to talk about. But do I think he's a true villain? No. I think Leon Silverberg is the one who kind of keeps it going for longer than it needs to go. Like, what is the point of that Beast Rune thing? I don't know. If he's trying to, like, destroy the Beast Rune at the very end, because he's the one who actually awakens the Beast Rune at the end of the game. But
I think he maybe did that to lure Rio and his party to the Beast Rune so it could be destroyed. Because
maybe.
From the very beginning, Joey has this idea that he wants there to be as little death as possible, and the way for that to happen is for Highland to rule the world. And And Silverberg's role, and he's the teacher of Shu, who's the tactician for Rio's army in the second half.
Well, he's the brother of the teacher. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to correct you. I'm sorry. He's the brother. He's the brother of the teacher of Shu.
Okay. So Matthew Silverberg taught Shu.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a character in Suikoden 1. You actually recruit him.
And the vibe that I got was once Shu is in your party, he is playing a chess game against Leon Silverberg, and Shu is playing to win, and Leon is playing to end the war with the minimum number of casualties, and they sort of both end up accomplishing their goals, but with Leon, his goal is permits a lot of bloodshed and is really heartless, and he's manipulating Luca and Joey in doing so. So I think that I think that like Shu and Leon are both kind of despicable in their actions, but with Shu, it's sort
don't talk about my boy Shu that way.
It's sort of done out of brilliance and out of a way to do and out of a want to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Where Leon is more callous and less and thinking less about the human cost than Shu.
Yeah, he's more Machiavellian in his actions.
Yes, very Machiavellian. Both of them are a little Machiavellian, but Shu subverts it while Leon embraces it.
I'm torn. I genuinely think at the end of the game, Leon tries to use the Beast Rune in an attempt to actually defeat the party, and because I think he actually believes in Joey as a ruler, and I think he
I can buy that. Yeah, absolutely.
I think maybe I'm giving Leon Silverberg too much credit.
I think he genuinely wants Joey to win, and I think he wants Highland to rule, because I think in the longer term he sees a powerful ruler with an iron fist and a great mind for tactics and stuff like Joey, in the long run going to cause less death and less war than what the city-states and Highland currently have going on, which is going to keep continuing war with also the Scarlet Moon Empire as well. So I think
is the Scarlet Moon Empire the
Suikoden 1?
The Suikoden 1 winning.
Although technically it's the Tauran Republic at this point. Yeah.
Oh, the Tauran Republic. Yeah.
That's okay. Right. Yes, Tauran Republic is a name I know because I didn't play Suikoden 1.
Mm-hmm. We go there towards the end.
I remember.
And Greg Minster for a moment. Yeah.
If you have a save from Suikoden 1, you can have McDowell from Suikoden 1 join
and
your party.
And he's the best character in Suikoden 2 as well.
He sure is.
He's busted, except for you have to walk to Greg Minster every time you want him.
Yeah.
That's the only part that sucks.
He doesn't hang out at your castle.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I remember reading about this, but unable to experience it for myself. Now, I personally think that this is a messy story without a true main villain, and the conflict. The end of the conflict is the sort of unstoppable force, immovable wall situation that we talked about a little bit in the episode from last year. But I think that you can reasonably say that Luca or Joey or the Beast Rune are or Necrolord, of course, are credible main villains of Suikoden 2. Because I think one character that Joey gets compared to a lot is Delita from Final Fantasy Tactics, because he's another person who sort of, from an unexpected place, seizes power in one of the ruling kingdoms in a messy war, and manipulates multiple sides to get to a satisfying
he's significantly
ending.
more successful too. Yeah.
And Delita is probably more successful and more trusting than Joey, because Delita doesn't desire to rule with an iron fist, or maybe he does a little bit, but Delita is always secretly rooting for Ramza and never directly fights Ramza. He knows that the Temple Knights will be a problem if they stick around, so he sort of lets Ramza defeat the Temple Knights and even helps them with some intel, while Delita is dealing with the princess and the nobility. So it's those two characters get compared often, but Joey has a bit of a darker edge to him, and the unstoppable force, immovable object, yin and yang metaphor between Joey and Ryo is very powerful, and not really similar with his relationship with Ramza.
You could make the argument that the Rune of Beginning is the true villain here. I mean, like, it's the idea that it's it's the thing when it splits off, it creates like this conflict that has to happen. Like, it's this idea that, like, it's this unification that has to happen between the two of them. It's the same thing that happened between Han and Genkaku.
But if the Rune of Beginning did not do that, then who would stop Luca Blight?
And you're right about that. I mean, my real answer to this question is that I think it's Luca Blight, because Joey doesn't do anything that he does without Luca. Ryo doesn't do anything he does without Luca. You know what I mean? So I think that my answer to this question is Luca, but I think you could make that argument.
If Luca Blight hadn't wiped out the Unicorn Brigade in the first 30 minutes of the game, then Joey and Ryo would have just been willing soldiers for the Highland side, and none of the actions would have happened.
It would just have been 2 more soldiers in the army.
I remember I specifically mentioned that we weren't going to talk about Luca Blight's regrets in that regrets category before, but that's what Luca Blight regrets. He regrets creating the 2 people that defeat him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. You're right.
I think Luca as the main and as the villain of Suikoden 2. I don't think just because the villain dies halfway through, he stops being the villain. I think a lot of the later game is just dealing with the repercussions of what he started. Yeah. So I think, he's definitely, I'd say, the main villain.
Yeah, that's probably the right answer. I mean, I would hear an argument for the Beast Rune / the evil that resides in the hearts of men, or Necrolord, of course. But
I don't like blaming the rune, because I feel like it's a bit like blaming the sea or a mountain, for being treacherous. The parts of nature in this world.
Right.
Or blaming human apathy being the main villain of any Persona game.
Right.
But that's a little unfair. But Luca Blight is the great evil presence in the game, and like you said, even after he dies, his legacy and repercussions from his actions are still hanging over the entire game. So probably the right answer to the question. Who's the main
what did I win?
Get into? Unless Necrolord revives himself in Suikoden 6. He's been the villain.
Oh.
Who says he's not in Suikoden 3, 4, and 5?
I haven't played those, so maybe he is. Suikoden 3, 4, 5.
Good
callback.
Yeah. It was a missed opportunity not to have him in 5 just because it is a prequel.
Yeah, he would have worked in 5.
Or 4.
Yeah.
Both of those take place before Suikoden 2. Okay.
Yeah, 5 is like pretty close to Suikoden 2. Like, there's some overlap characters like George Prime.
Leona, I think you told me that before, and I just forgot, because there are so many names to throw around in this series, and I am not aware of its timeline at all. But let's move on a little bit. This category is called comps. So, who are the best non-Luca Blight RPG villains of his time, and what are the best Suikoden villains other than Luca Blight? That would, don't necessarily match up to him, but might be worthy subjects of a future villains episode.
Oh man, I have an answer here, but it's going to spoil Suikoden 5 hard.
Okay,
hard.
Okay, we will not do that. But let's say that the main villain of Suikoden 5 is
not even the main villain.
No.
Wow. Okay.
I can't say anything else actually.
All right.
But it's brilliant.
I know both of you like Suikoden 5 a lot, but Suikoden 5 fans listening to this are screaming someone's name at me right now. And
they are indeed.
I have no earthly idea who it could be. But
they're not even really a villain. They're just great. I'm sorry.
There's like 3 characters in Suikoden 5 who are like the villain, but not really. So
right.
It's like really hard just wanting to say they are.
It gets hard to find a comp with Suikoden because there really aren't any. I mean, Suikoden 3 has like a main villain who does some things that are truly evil. It's actually it's a character you've met at this point.
I know. I have been spoiled on that, so I do know who that is.
Sorry. Yeah, but I think that their motivations are but they're still like motivations for that character. There's still like a reason they're doing what they're doing. There's no comp for Luca Blight in Suikoden series, and it's amazing that we like Luca Blight because he falls so far outside of what Suikoden I think stands for, which is two sides that are opposing that sort of create evil as a result of war. I can't think of any comps for him, really.
Well, I'm going to give an answer that's probably a little conventional and maybe even lazy. Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In terms of PS1, I agree.
Yeah. He communicates power and fear in a really awesome way. I mean that iconic sort of looking at the camera, walking backwards into the fire. Especially how Sephiroth's sort of a phantom presence for the first quarter or so of Final Fantasy VII, and we know more about his legend than about his real actions, and how he has some real messed up past that is feeding into his psychosis, even though we don't know all of Luca Blight's past in the events of Suikoden II. I think you have to get to the level of Sephiroth to make a villain of that era that compares to Luca Blight.
I agree.
And as much as it's maybe I don't want to say passé or hipster, it's Final Fantasy VII is incredibly popular. I know, hot take. And to which point that it might be like people might roll their eyes, but by praising how good Final Fantasy VII is,
Sephiroth is an excellent villain.
Yeah, that game has.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Sephiroth has some real impact, and I don't want to. Final Fantasy VII is not my favorite Final Fantasy game, but but Sephiroth has real presence and real impact, and he's one of the few non-Luca villains that can compare to him.
Yeah.
The way I'm calling Luca by his first name almost makes me think I'm talking about like Luka Doncic on the Mavericks or something. So, okay, we're almost finished recording, but there is one last question I want to present to each of you. Zach, I think you might have even used Luca Blight as your answer when we recorded the Kefka podcast.
I did indeed.
I'd have to listen again to double check.
I think I probably said Joey, actually, but I said anyone from Suikoden.
That sounds about right. In fact, we maybe were talking about just 10 minutes ago.
Yeah,
but,
indeed.
If we were to do another RPG Villains episode, so RPG Villains Part 3, who do you think would be a great subject to discuss? Zach, let's have you go first again. I mean,
I'm going to have to go with Pokey from Earthbound. I think that thinking about like people will be interested in hearing about him. If we're going to do another Final Fantasy villain, I think Kuja would be interesting. He has some Sephiroth-ish characteristics, but there's a lot more background to discuss. But Pokey, I think, would be fascinating to discuss, and a lot of people, I think, would be into that.
All right, and Leona, if we were to do another RPG Villains episode in a few months, who would be a good subject?
I was gonna say Kuja. He's my favorite RPG.
Sorry.
I said no, it's fine. It's fine, thief. No, I do love Kuja. He has like it's like one of the most like relatable reasons to go villain, I think, that I can think of. If I had to think of another person, I think maybe... Give me a second, you can cut this out, but I'm going to our reviews section and looking at titles of games.
All right, want me to give you my two suggestions?
Yeah, you go for that.
I have two ideas here. One of them is extremely influenced by recent events, and the other one is not. I think Emmett Selk from Final Fantasy XIV is the best Final Fantasy villain probably since Kuja. Which gives us 19 or 20 years, and I just want to talk about him with someone. It's not really a spoiler that he's the villain. He's one of the evil shadowy beings that's been a central villain since 2013. But he gives a lot of insight into what the Ascians are and a lot of the central conflict behind Final Fantasy XIV. He's awesome, the most memorable character in a really, really good story, which I haven't finished yet. But my other answer, and this is not really from one specific game, but I think it would be interesting to talk about Bowser in the context of Mario RPGs, because
that would be awesome. Actually,
yeah, he's an important side character in the Mario and Luigi games. He's a playable character in Super Mario RPG. He's the main villain in almost a normal, boring way in the first Paper Mario, and he's in all of the Mario RPGs, or at least the huge majority of them. But his role is different in each of them, and he also has this like a comedy aspect to him, and even a low self-esteem aspect to him, and that's not quite the same in any game. So I think an episode just talking about Bowser in the Mario RPGs would be awesome, and would definitely not be a villains episode, but I think the best character in all of the Mario RPGs has been the recent interpretations of Luigi.
Yeah, I agree.
I love Luigi.
Him or Falafel, yeah.
Yeah, him or Fawful or Bowser. I could do a Retro Encounter episode on any of them, but Luigi definitely wouldn't be an RPG villain.
I know Peter would be on one of those.
Oh yeah, no, Peter would host the episode. You kidding? I'll be on that panel, but I think Peter's got the mic that time.
I agree.
So Leona, have you thought up an idea for a future villains episode?
I was gonna suggest Black.
I didn't steal another one from you, did I?
Yeah, no. I was going to suggest the Black Knight from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance.
Oh, yeah.
I think
he is a good villain.
Yeah, I think so. He's got a mysterious sort of presence for so much of the game. You're left wondering for so much, and he does so much. He shows up just to kick your ass a lot of the time.
I'm trying to think. Is there what other Fire Emblem villains might be a good idea? Like maybe Zephiel from from Fuin no Tsurugi, but
yeah,
he doesn't. If anything, Zephiel is kind of like a diet Luca Blight.
I think the only more interesting one is actually from Three Houses. So that's so recent. It's
that's too recent. People would get mad.
It's too recent. Yeah,
people would get mad talking about that game on a show called Retro Encounter.
Exactly. But that character, absolutely, I would discuss.
Interesting. I think we've done it, lady and gentlemen. We have another RPG villain broken down pretty deeply. Luca Blight is one of the most popular, most memorable villains of that era of RPGs from a game that it has a real army of fans. Before we aired that episode, it was the most suggested game to be on Retro Encounter. We don't get a lot of feedback from email or from the community, but what feedback we did get was had a lot of Suikoden II in it.
I might have been one of those people.
Maybe I don't know. I'd have to go into the deep email archive. But
it was really popular in social media. I remember that.
Yeah. Whenever we do Suikoden anything in social media, it gets a good return, and Suikoden 2 is the fan favorite within the fan favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about the future of Retro Encounter for a little bit. Next week, we're going to do an episode based on sports, but it's going to get delayed. One of the panelists is getting married and is going to be very busy for a few weeks, so that episode is delayed probably into September. So I don't know exactly what episode is airing next week. I still have to. I'm just going to see who's available, and we'll talk about shoes or something. We'll figure it out.
Shoe from Suikoden II?
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. Retro Encounter 203, RPG Heroes. Who's the true hero of Suikoden 2?
Shu.
Ryo, Nanami, Shu, or Joey?
Pelika.
Shu.
one episode that is definitely happening in the future is 2 episodes on Wild Arms 3 in September. I have barely started, so I really need to get my ass in gear and start playing that. It won a poll earlier this year, so we're going to have 2 episodes on Wild Arms 3 next month. But beyond that, we don't have a lot of plans. We have a Google Doc full of ideas of what the episodes in October and November are going to be. There is a poll that we held last week for a future Retro Encounter game that was paired with episode 200, that poll has not closed yet at the time of this recording, so I do not know what has won that poll right now, but listener, you may already know, because by the time this episode comes out, that poll will have closed.
I hope it's what I voted for.
Yeah, I can say what I voted for, too.
Yeah.
The choices were Disgaea 1, Star Ocean 2, Persona 2, Nier Automata, and... Oh, you know what? I forgot the 5th one.
No!
or Suikoden 5. So, one of those 5 will be a future Retro Encounter episode, but we do not know what the winner is at the time of this recording, but by the time this is available, people will know. So, listeners, if you want to get in touch with the podcast, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also visit rpgfan.com for message boards and links to our Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter account, Discord server, Twitch channel, which has something going on basically every day, and our other podcasts, Random Encounter about current events and random discussion, and Rhythm Encounter about RPG music. One of those is more active than the other. But listeners, you can also review Retro Encounter or those 2 other fine podcasts on iTunes or Google Play or however you are listening to us. Please provide feedback and give us those nice ratings, 5 stars, 5 stars. We want all the constructive criticism you can provide. So, Leona and Zach, let's tell the listeners how they can reach us more directly, starting with you, Leona.
Well, I moderate our Discord server, which you can find a link to on the front page of our site. I go by Star Mongoose on there, and we have a podcast channel dedicated to the 3 podcasts that we run. And you're more than welcome to come join us. We've got a fairly active community, and it's really fun.
Right on. And Zach, how can listeners reach you?
You can reach me by emailing me at zachw@rpgfan.com or on Discord at zachw.
And listeners, if you want to reach me directly, you can find me on Twitter at TheRealMonsoon, most of the time at Evoker for Dogs. Other times, I am also Monsoon Mike on Discord and Monsoon on RPG Fans forums. It was fun revisiting Suikoden 2. I agree. I was really blown away by that game. I was like expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be good, and it exceeded expectations. And we dedicated most of the podcast to like who we think the villain of it is. It's
crazy. Like we went in depth, and we have not even really scratched the surface of Suikoden 2.
We could do a second episode on this exact.
I agree.
I do not think we should.
Actually, like 5 or 6 more. Actually,
okay,
that's my suggestion.
That is not going to happen. But Suikoden 2 is definitely worth a podcast or 3. And listeners, thank you. Good night and good luck.